LSU gets the win over Arkansas 23-22. Michael Van Buren makes his first start. We get full recap locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe as always. One of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And as always, thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. We are flattered, humbled, and glad to have you hanging out with us here. LSU's losing streak is over. The Tigers had not won a game in 5 weeks since they beat South Carolina. Of course, after that, subsequently, you had Vanderbilt, you had an open date, you had Alabama. You've had a long stretch of time here since LSU has managed to win a football game. But that all ended Saturday when LSU beat Arkansas 23-22 to retain the Golden Boot. It was not a win that came easy. It was a game where LSU trailed for the bulk of the first half and needed a beautiful 12-play, 92-yard drive, pulling out basically every trick in the book to rally to win. So there's two things I want to talk about here. One, of course, let's recap the game. And then I want to talk about Michael Van Buren's day, because I'm sure that's why most people are here. Van Buren did, in fact, get the start. We'll talk about that decision, which, if you're an everydayer and shout out, you know that I liked. Whenever we learned on Thursday that Nussmeier was hurt, my feeling was there's no sense in playing a limited Garrett Nussmeier in this game. Van Buren can play another game, maintain the red shirt, use this week to get a full evaluation of Van Buren and get Nussmeier healthier to see what it may look like next week for Senior Day against Western Kentucky, and then the regular season finale in Norman against Oklahoma. So we'll cross that bridge as we get there. But let's go through this game. Candidly, there was a lot of bad for LSU in this game. And most of that has to be centered around the fact that and understanding that LSU was playing Arkansas, which was coming into this game a 2-7 football team. Defensively, the worst team in the SEC, in the 120s nationally, in total defense, in scoring defense. You were playing an atrocious football team. You were at home in this game, and it should have been a game where you're more talented on both sides of the ball, and you should have been able to go out and control this thing. But a lot of issues for LSU made this closer than it needed to be. And quite honestly, if we're being very honest, Arkansas let one get away. Hogs turned it over 3 times in this football game, and LSU managed just 6 points off of 3 turnovers. That's unacceptable. That's not including a missed 48-yard field goal that would have given Arkansas the lead with 5:08 to play in the ball game, and a second half drive where Arkansas went for it on fourth and goal from the 1-yard line, and they were stuffed. So you had a turnover on downs there as well. So this is a game that Arkansas is going to look at that film and go, man, you let one get away on the road against LSU that was entirely winnable. But it's one where LSU was desperately in need of a win, and they got it. So the Tigers get the 6 wins. They're 6-4. They're bowl eligible now with 2 games remaining. A few things about this ball game. Whenever I chart the game, I chart every play on my, you'll see if you're watching, on my yellow legal pad. I chart the entire game, and I have at the top of the page columns, and I have good plays, bad plays, and then general takeaways. You can see on the good plays in the first half, there's like 4 or 5 of them. On the bad plays, there's 2 columns of them. Just very quickly, you had a punt block for a touchdown. You had a 25-yard punt. Michael Van Buren nearly threw an interception on his first pass of the game. You allowed them to convert a 4th and 2. You allowed them to convert a 4th and 1. Berrien Brown had a drop. You had a kickoff out of bounds. You gave up a sack on a 3rd and 6. Ori Williams had a false start on a 4th and 1 when you were going for it. You had an OPI on Xavier Thomas that would have converted a 3rd down. Harlan Berry had a drop. That's just the first half. Second half, Carius Kern gave up a sack. You allowed a 55-yard run to Taylen Green. You had an offsides on 88 there on the defensive line. Bernard Gooden. You allowed a 26-yard punt return. 3rd and 18, you allowed a conversion and added a face mask on top of that by P.J. Woodland. You had a hold by Weston Davis. You had another kickoff out of bounds. You had a false start by Valor Sharp. You were bad. You were bad. You played a muddied, gross football game, but you managed to win. You managed to win when you had to get it, and ultimately LSU did get it. I think about how this game started. Arkansas, the big concern was that's a really good offensive team, and could LSU's defense stop or limit a running quarterback in Taylen Green? And you did ultimately, because you were able to come up with big plays in this ball game. But they start and they're right down the field, and they're at your 26-yard line, and they have a 3rd and 1, and they run a toss dive, the Les Miles special, and they fumble. Jack Pyburn jumps on it, and you're thinking, all right, here we go. LSU's offense with Michael Van Buren against this awful Arkansas defense. You run with Harlan Berry on 1st down, 2nd down. Van Buren darn near throws an interception. He throws wide of his intended target, probably should have been intercepted. You end up punting, going 3 and out. That punt gets blocked for a touchdown. You're down 7-0, just like that. All of the fears of this game, sleepy environment, not a lot of energy in the stadium, a team not playing for anything, playing sloppy. It reared its ugly head right there at the very onset. You're down 7-0. You get the ball back, and very quickly, you go 3 and out and punt. And it's a 25-yard punt. Grant Chadwick, who leads the SEC in average yards per punt, a 25-yard punt, giving Arkansas the ball at the 47-yard line. Half the field, basically. And they go right down the field. Actually, could have been a quicker scoring drive because Taylen Green missed a wide-open receiver on a 3rd and 2. But they converted 4th and 2. They converted 4th and 1. And ultimately, Taylen Green would score on a quarterback draw to make it 14-0 Arkansas. And you're feeling like this is the worst case scenario. But the Tigers would get it in gear, and they got in gear running the football. And if I'm going to take one big takeaway from this game, it's the fact that LSU finally did what I've been saying all season is they needed balance. LSU ran the ball 37 times. They threw it 33. They had balance. They ran it more than they threw it. You ultimately won this football game, and you sealed it running the football. And your first score came on a 27-yard touchdown run by Caden Durham to get within 14-7. Now, after you kick off out of bounds, you force a 3 and out. You get the ball at your own 18. You put together a really nice drive. However, you overcome a sack. You overcome 1 sack on a 3rd and 5. You get a 22-yard reception by Caden Durham. You have a 3rd and 6 where you get sacked again. Again, the mobility of Michael Van Buren didn't really pay a lot of dividends here, who sacked 4 times. You give up ultimately you kick a 50-yard field goal. Hat tip to Damian Ramos. He was perfect. 50, 42, and 42. 3 for 3 on field goals. And ultimately, that's what gave you the margin to win this football game because, again, you didn't get to the red zone and you weren't able to finish drives with touchdowns. After you pull within 14-10, first play, Harold Perkins with an interception. And how about a big hat tip to Perk on a day where you needed someone to step up, and he was awesome again. Just 4 tackles, but a sack, 2.5 TFLs, an interception, a quarterback hurry. Harold Perkins was all over the field, and he has just terrorized Arkansas. There's probably no team in the SEC that's going to be happier to see Harold Perkins out of eligibility than the Arkansas Razorbacks. And, the Tigers would kick another field goal. They were going to go for it on 4th and 1. Ori Williams false start. So you end up kicking another field goal to make it 14-13. And you get a stop. You get a sack from Perkins, a sack from Spears. You force another 3 and out. You get the ball at 2:47, and it's the exact same situation of a week ago against Alabama, where you're getting the ball to start the second half. You have it late in the first half, a chance to go get points, bring it closer, or in this case, take the lead, and then double up. 2:47, unfortunately for LSU, you get the OPI on Xavier Thomas, a drop by Harlan Berry, and you have to punt. So you got to give the ball back to Arkansas with 1:35. In this situation a week ago, Bama went right down the field and scored in 3 plays. It looked like this was going to happen again. 13 yards, 24 yards, 25 yards, boom, boom, boom. And just like that, they're at your 9-yard line. And then Mansour Delane comes up with a big interception in the end zone. I was thrilled to see that for Delane. He has been, I think, one of the best cornerbacks in college football this year, but the stats haven't been there because nobody throws his way. Nice to see him get that. Maybe that bolsters his case for something like the Thorpe Award at the end of this season. So instead of in that situation, a 14-13 game, instead of Arkansas building on their lead, Tigers get the ball with 29 seconds. It looks like they're going to run out the clock. 14-yard run by Durham, 14-yard run by Berry, and just like that, you're at midfield. You get a PI, by the way. Van Buren almost threw an interception down the left sideline again. You get a PI, and you get a 12-yarder to Xavier, PI, 12-yarder to Xavier Thomas, and you kick a 42-yard field goal to take the lead. So you're leading 16-14 at half, and you're getting the ball to start the second half, and you feel like there's a great opportunity to go take control of this game. And it looked good out the chute, man. 34-yarder, 50-50 ball down the left sideline to Xavier Thomas, and he made an awesome play. But after that, 5-yard run, sack, incomplete pass, punt. Again, it was just one of those days where the thing we've talked about with the LSU offense all along this year, one quarterback was not going to cure it. And Michael Van Buren didn't cure it, but they did enough to win because you came up with defensive plays like LSU did on the next drive. 55-yard run by Taylen Green, and then they would end up with a goal-to-go situation. First and goal from the 7, second and goal from the 5, offsides by Gooden, second and goal from the 2. Dom McKinley with the big stop on 3rd and goal for no gain, and on 4th and goal, Jacoby and Guillory over the top, big stuff. Point scoring opportunity there that Arkansas passed on. They should have taken points there. They didn't. And ultimately, the Tigers would get the ball back. You'd punt. They would go on a touchdown drive with the 2-point conversion to take the lead, 22-16. And this is where you felt like you had to have it, and the game was starting to get low because you're approaching the fourth quarter. You had a big holding on Weston Davis when you had converted a 14-yard catch and run by Xavier Thomas. It brings you back to 2nd and 21. So, again, for LSU, it was a sloppy game where they just kept making mistakes that didn't allow them to get ahead in the game on the scoreboard or ahead on the sticks. But your defense came up with a huge stop. And ultimately, you'd get the ball with 14-10 to play, down 22-16. You're down 6 points. And that's when you went on the 12-play, 92-yard drive. Amazing. And Alex Atkins was in his bag. On this drive, Juwan Johnson ran Wildcat where Van Buren did the clap snap. You ran a double pass that was incomplete. You had a 21-yard reception by Berry and Brown. You had a double pass from Juwan Johnson to Taylen Green for 14 yards. A double pass to Kyle Parker for 10 yards. Holding on Taylen, which negated that double pass to Kyle Parker, but you were able to overcome it because of a face mask. And ultimately, Bauer Sharp on 3rd and 6 would come up with a touchdown that would give LSU the lead. 12 plays, 92 yards, 7:53 to play in the ball game. You survived a missed field goal from 48 yards, got the ball back with 5:08 to play, and I love this. 5:08 to play. On the first play of that possession, Bauer Sharp had a false start. So you got 1st and 15. You run a shovel pass for a loss of 1. So it's 1st and 16 here. And I'm sorry. Yeah, 2nd and 16, excuse me. Michael Van Buren runs for 35 yards. Then you went Durham for 5 yards, Durham for 3 yards, Berry for 3 yards, Berry for 2 yards, Berry for 5 yards, Berry for 3 yards, and then ultimately Berry would call ball game, sliding down without going into the end zone, and LSU would take a knee. I love the fact that aside from that shovel pass, LSU ran the ball and iced away the game. It's the thing we've talked about all season. It's not that LSU can't run. It's been their lack of commitment to running. Today, they committed to running. 37 rushing attempts, 33 passing attempts. LSU put up 390 of total offense and beat Arkansas 23-22. A game where you needed all the turnovers you got. You needed a missed field goal. You needed a goal line stand at the 1-yard line. It's one that Arkansas is going to be sick about because they'll fly back to Northwest Arkansas thinking one got away, and they're right. One got away. But LSU had to get a win. They had to break this losing streak. Frank Wilson gets his first win as the interim head coach, which was awesome to see. And now the Tigers are off for senior night against Western Kentucky next week in Tiger Stadium. And then one more game against Oklahoma. Tigers are bowl eligible. So another opportunity to get a lot of young guys, even more experience with 15 bowl practices and a bowl game, which, man, they certainly, clearly need. So LSU wins 23-22, but the biggest thing I think most people are talking about is Michael Van Buren. We'll talk about it next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time and in just a couple of taps saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25, and the app makes it super simple. You can see the exact view from your seat before buying. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And we're brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game, you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Tigers win 23-22, but certainly most everyone was talking about the day Michael Van Buren had. Again, I am totally on board with the decision to sit Nussmeier. When we learned about his injury on Thursday, it was absolutely the right decision. You let Nuss heal. You get a full evaluation of Van Buren. You make your decision going forward. I think the big picture takeaway from this day with Van Buren has to be that if you thought Michael Van Buren was going to be the cure-all, this probably illustrates to you that there are bigger picture issues with LSU's offense that wasn't just Nussmeier. Again, the thing that I want to be very candid about, because I know there's a lot of disagreement. I know where LSU fans stand on this. Overwhelmingly, and I know, I mean, I do a ton of content. I leave myself open for a lot of feedback, be it on my show text line here on Locked on LSU, in the comments section, my Twitter, everywhere. Overwhelmingly, I think LSU fans were ready to see something different. You're ready to see Michael Van Buren. Okay, that's fine. I'm not saying that's wrong. And Garrett Nussmeier has struggled this year and has not been good for whatever number of reasons. But I think what this game should show you, and me and everybody, is that Nussmeier was not good, has not been good this year, but he was not your sole issue. Nussmeier wasn't the thing singularly that was holding your offense back. And you saw that in this football game, because a lot of the same issues that you've seen all year reared their ugly head again with Michael Van Buren under center. Michael Van Buren took 4 sacks in this football game because your offensive line is not very good. You say, well, he's mobile. He can get away. No, he can't. He was sacked 4 times. Van Buren had 2 passes that he was lucky weren't intercepted. His first pass of the game on 2nd and 7 on the first drive on the left hash probably should have been intercepted. The deep ball in the 2-minute drill at the end of the half that he threw after the PI, you're at the Arkansas 37. He didn't need to throw the ball deep. You're approaching field goal range. He threw it deep down the left sideline, nearly intercepted. It's a poor decision right there. Van Buren's inaccuracy is part of his story right now. On the game, by the way, he was 21 of 31 for 221, a touchdown and no interceptions. Completed 68% of his passes. In the second half, they went much more to a short passing game. I loved the go ball down the left sideline, the 50-50 ball in the first play of the third quarter, where he gave Xavier Thomas a chance to go get it, and he made the play. Love to see that. You didn't get points there, but I still love to see that from Van Buren. I loved on the last drive on a 2nd and 16, Van Buren ran for 35 yards, which ultimately shook you loose and allowed you to move the ball and go finish off that drive and finish off the game. And I think as we've talked about Van Buren going all the way back to fall camp, the feeling about Van Buren was, and I don't know that if you have any interest, you can go back and listen to or watch any of the fall camp reports that we had. And I could pull out my notebook. But if I were to give you the overarching feeling about Van Buren during fall camp, it was he was really struggled with his accuracy. Even drills against air, he just struggled to complete balls when there was no defense. He and Colin Hurley, by the way. But every now and again, you'd see a play where you'd go, oh, wow. The one that comes to mind was in the spring game, which if you were in Tiger Stadium that day or the spring scrimmage, you saw it. LSU was going, the offense was going toward the south end zone, but the 30-yard line, and Van Buren just rips one right down the seam in the back of the end zone, splits two defenders, and you're like, my goodness, it's an amazing play. There's one play in my mind I could think fall camp when they were in 11-on-11, and Van Buren was being pressured, and then he shook loose, darted upfield, made a couple of guys miss, and he weaved his way for about a 25-yard run. Not that dissimilar from the 35-yarder you saw at the end of the game. So to that end, I absolutely agree. Van Buren provides a dimension that Garrett Nussmeier does not. The ability, that 35-yard run is not something Garrett Nussmeier is capable of. Undeniably, he gives you that dimension. But I also look and say, if you're worried or feeling like Nussmeier was holding you back, you just played the worst defense in the SEC. One of the worst in the country. Arkansas is in the 120s nationally in scoring defense, total defense. Worst defense statistically in the SEC. And you scored 23 points on your home field. And some are going to say, and I've heard this, well, there would have been more, but Harlan Berry went down at the end. He could have gone in the end zone. Okay, it's a garbage time touchdown either way. But then what if I presented to you the South Carolina game where Juwan Johnson fumbled going into the end zone, where Damian Ramos missed a short field goal? Like, that's 10 more points you could have had. And Nuss did throw an interception at the goal line in that game as well. But the point being, there have been games and opportunities to score, but the inability to finish drives for whatever reason, like last week in Tuscaloosa, when they were trying to get out of the shadow of their own end zone, and Van Buren's in there, throws the ball to Trey'Dez Green, and he drops it. Well, that's on Trey'Dez. But if you're being intellectually honest, you can't magnify Harlan Berry's drop against against Arkansas, or Trey'Dez Green's drop on the road against Alabama, and ignore the inability to make those plays, the 50-50 balls to drops when Garrett Nussmeier's been in there. All that to say, listen, Garrett's career is coming to an end, and it's been a miserable year for him individually, for this team, with enormous expectations, national championship expectations, preseason top 10, all the way up to number 3 in the country after you beat Clemson. Nussmeier was a preseason Heisman co-favorite with Cade Klubnik, potential first-round pick, and it's gone awful. Be it the combination of the injury that limited him in camp, a bad offensive line, poor scheme, bad play call, all of it. Like, all of it has just been terrible, objectively. But he's also not, and he's part of it, but he's not the singular issue that's held your offense back. And you saw a lot of that today. I mean, your first offensive possession, you went 3 and out and had a punt block. You nearly had a ball intercepted. On your second possession of the football game, you went 3 and out and punted again. You had that opportunity before the half, and you went 3 and out and punted. All that to say, whatever they do moving forward, they have got to fundamentally change and evaluate what they are offensively. If Michael Van Buren is going to be your starting quarterback next week or next year, then the scheme has to fit his skill set. This year, unfortunately, you didn't have an offensive line that could keep Garrett Nussmeier upright and allow him time to stretch the field and throw the ball. Alabama is a great example of this. Alabama is as porous a rushing offense as LSU, but they're having a fantastic season because their very talented quarterback has had time to stand and throw to the receivers downfield, like LSU offensively a year ago with Nussmeier. They didn't run the ball effectively, but Nussmeier threw it a ton because he had time to stand and confidently deliver the ball because he had Will Campbell and Emory Jones protecting his blind side. Nussmeier hasn't had it this year. Van Buren won't have it this year. So whatever it looks like next year, you got to make sure that you're protecting your assets and you're accentuating whoever your quarterback may be. If it's Van Buren or someone else, you get out of the portal. There was some good. You were facing a really dynamic quarterback. You held Taylen Green 100 yards under. Taylen Green leads the country in yards per game, and in this ball game, he threw for 165 and ran it for 70. So you held Taylen Green 100 yards below his per game yardage total average. You held Arkansas, that averages 35 points a game, to 22. And look, a lot of that's on them. You know what I mean? I mean, they turned it over 3 times. The fumble they had on their first possession was an unforced error. The interception at the goal line at the end of the first half, that was a receiver cutting off his route. Mansour Delane made the play. The Perkins play was outstanding, no doubt. Jacoby and Guillory stuffing them at the 1-yard line was a great play by Jacoby and Guillory. So credit LSU for making a couple of those plays, but some of those were opportunities that Arkansas had to score points, but LSU defensively made the plays. So a day where you can exhale a little bit after a 3-game losing streak. When you go, you didn't have Nussmeier, you didn't have Whitweeks again in this football game. You finally got back on the board with a win, and now you can go into next week against Western Kentucky and Senior Day, celebrate these guys who have stuck it out this year and throughout their careers, and get a win on Senior Day, and then hopefully you go up to Norman on the final weekend, maybe play your best game and find a way to steal a win. Feels far-fetched, but as they say, that's why they play the game. Tigers win 23-22. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on Locked On LSU. We will have your PFF grades episode coming up as well, so we look forward to seeing you here for that. As always, please drop your comments. Let me know what you thought about the game, and as always, make suggestions on what you'd like to see on the show. Certainly plenty of LSU football still to talk about with a couple of games left, and tons of coaching search news as well that we'll continue to dive into here on Locked On LSU. So thanks for making us your first listen. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Facebook, we're not on Facebook, but if you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU. It's your team every day.